Hello and welcome to the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center. I am Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. I am the founder and the spiritual director. Now, as you are sitting there joining us, you may have questions, any number of questions, such as, who am I? How did I get here? Spiritually integrated arts means what exactly? What is a teaching center? Well, what is Centers for Spiritual Living? What is that? What does that even mean? Or New Thought, or religious science, or science of mind and spirit? You may have any number of questions about this specific community, about the parent organization, CSL, our philosophy, our teaching, our liberation theology. Any number of questions. Feel free to send an email. We look forward to connecting more and building our virtual community, our global community. And if you haven't connected yet on social media, feel free to do so. This is your invitation now. Also, did you know that all of our Sunday messages are archived on our YouTube channel? You can watch it anytime. Now, questions about anything, such as becoming a member. What does that mean? What does membership entail? And if you live somewhere far and already belong to a spiritual community, can you be a member of more than one? The simple answer is yes, you can. Just like you can shop at more than one grocery store, you can attend or be a member of more than one gym. We are building beloved community. So you can do both. You can be a member of both. You can be involved with both. That's what being in spiritual community means. So we welcome you. We invite you. We are so appreciative that you have found this community and that you have joined us today. We bless you. We love you. We welcome you. Live long and prosper. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of our Sunday message. Love you. Connect with you soon. Blessings. Namaste and greetings. Hello and welcome to our final week of December, which is actually the last day. We don't even have a full week because tomorrow is January 1st, 2024. And so as we close out 2023, today, December 31st, we close it out by expanding at the top and at the bottom. If you've been with me for any significant amount of time, then you have heard me reference what Ernest Holmes said about being open at the top, you've heard me also add on open at the bottom. So here we are. How do we expand at the top and at the bottom? So as we complete this year in preparation of 2024, which is the theme, A Grand Rising, how do we take everything that we have learned? How do we take all of the changes that 2023 brought into our experience and usher it into a new year, usher it into a new experience where we are expanding at the top and at the bottom? In our individual lives, what does that mean to expand at the top and at the bottom? How do we enter into greater oneness and greater unity? Now, we're going to talk a little bit about this whole idea of learning stuff. And you see on the screen where it says, when you get to the top of the mountain, keep climbing. Wait a minute. If I'm at the top of the mountain, there's only space and sky. Keep climbing. Soar. Do you remember recently we talked about this idea of standing on solid air? Keep climbing, as the old Zen saying says. Get to the mountaintop and keep climbing. Not because there's something to get, but because it's part of the journey to keep going. Now, the principles, which are the mountain, stay the same, but our relationship to the foundation, our relationship, our mental equivalence, and all of that, that shifts and evolves and changes in relationship to. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, when you can't change what's going, and I'm paraphrasing, when you can't change what's going on outside of you, change what's going on inside of you, and it changes your relationship to what's going on outside of you. So for the sake of conversation, let's think about, because I've been doing a lot of reading and stuff regarding domestic violence and how gun violence plays a part in domestic violence, since I'm involved in Moms Demand Action. And for the sake of this, let's look at Tina Turner. Tina Turner was in an abusive relationship with Ike for a long time. And for a long time, she simply received the beatings. Now, there were times that she fought back, but it's still abuse. And then she starts, now at that time she was Christian. And then she starts learning and studying Buddhism. She starts chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. She changes on the inside. And that starts to change how she now relates to all of the people around her, including Ike. And she finds this place of strength and fortitude by being open at the top and open at the bottom. And it gives her the capacity to reach the mountaintop and keep climbing and leave him beneath or wherever. That's his journey, his path. I'm going to keep climbing. I'm going to keep soaring. I'm going to keep expanding. I am not going to stay stuck in this experience over and over. So when we realize, so the principles, the foundation of science of mind and spirit, new thought, the principles remain the same. They're eternal principles. And yet, how we relate to them, how we embody them, how we put them to use changes. So this year, 2023, what did it bring to you? What did you do? What did you want to do that you didn't do? What all happened? If you could sum up 2023, what did you learn? One sentence. Where have you been? One sentence. How have you changed? One sentence. In what ways have you not changed? One sentence. It's like the catchphrase. While also being mindful that it's also, what did you enjoy? What did you love? What made you laugh? What beauty did you see and experience? It's all of that and so much more. That if we took one sentence for each of the things, one sentence for each of the things, one sentence for each of the things, we would have an entire book of what 2023 means and meant for us, what it brought to our experience, because it's vast. We are not these single dimensional, we're multi-dimensional beings. So, how we experience moment by moment, day by day, week by week, month by month, the year. It's a vast plethora of experiences, but for many, this is just gotta make the donuts. We're caught on rote. We don't step back and pause and assess, where am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? Where do I want to go? So, as we close out 2023, that's precisely one of the things I want us to talk about. While keeping in mind, as this young woman reminds us, darling, don't you know that the New Thought concept of being here to learn is a false notion based upon an anthropomorphic God? And that this is rooted in the consciousness of colonization and cognitive imperialism? What? You are here to be and evolve. If you learn something, that is something you have chosen, not something that you are predestined, that you were created for or put here to do or learn. Learning is a choice. This is not a school. The universe has no need to create a school, the earth school, for the purpose of what? The universe is experiencing itself no matter what. So there is no need for it to purposefully create a school to learn when it knows all already. It's to experience, to be what it already is. River doesn't need to learn. Cloud doesn't need to learn. Rosebud doesn't need to learn. They simply are. Same for us. We are here to be the fullest expression of ourselves. The rose need not try to be a daffodil. The rose simply grows to be what it is. The fullest expression of rose. Am I living in such a way that I am fully expressing myself as the divine while using the name Ray? Because Ray is my name. It is not the isness and allness of. Ray is what we call it, as Shakespeare said regarding a rose. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So what you call it is far less important than simply the experience of it. Not knowing its name, does it change what it smells like? Does it change how beautiful it is? I don't go to a museum and have to know the name of each artist and the theme or subject of each painting or piece of art. I can enjoy the art for what it is being, for what I see and what I feel without knowing the background information. I don't need the dossier of Picasso or Rembrandt or whomever. I can simply enjoy. Can I do that with my own life, though? Can I simply enjoy what it means to be me in this life, in this experience, without the consciousness of colonization or cognitive imperialism trying to force me into, you gotta learn something, you're here to learn something, etc., etc., etc. Now, I know this is a controversial concept that I am introducing, and yet, if we really explore what New Thought teaches, and I mean to the core, then this is what we're going to realize. The universe has no need to learn anything. So, where does that idea come from? Colonization, cognitive imperialism. Because for as long as it can categorize, think of grade school. What do we do with kids who are really good at math or really good at English, literature, whatever, and then those that are not so good based upon how we are judging and quantifying what good means? They become scholars. They get A pluses and 4.0s. They fail or are very close to failing on a regular. And so we label, they're A students, they're the scholars, they're the ones who struggle. They're the ones who are probably, they're going to be probably own their own companies and whatever. They're probably going to, they're going to have to be a garbage man or something. I've heard many a teacher, many a educational colleague refer to a student in such a way because of the grades they get based upon the system that we're operating in. And I'm sure we've heard some reference, for as long as you're trying to teach a fish to climb a tree, the fish will always fail. For as long as you are trying to teach a pig to fly, it will always fail. It's not what it's meant to do. So find out what attributes are its natural attributes and promote those. When we understand what this child's natural attributes are, what motivates them, what excites them, and we go there, all of the other stuff, pause for a second, because some of the stuff that we teach children, we don't need to force feed them this stuff. But the system does, because the system needs them to be nice little automatons who follow the rules and know their place. But when we get into what is this child's natural skills and attributes, learning happens almost by osmosis. There have been many a child who wasn't good with traditional math, but they were excellent with music. And when they learned that music is numbers, and because they already got the music. So this is a 4/4. Oh, so that's a half. Oh, that's measure. Wait a minute, that's the same as
and they mesh. And now it's like, oh, well, I understand this now. Oh, but it was by nurturing where their natural inclinations, desires, and passions already were. So, where in our own lives are we invited to be in our own space of what brings me joy? What is my bliss? What do I love? And expand that container. Ruben Alves says, the frontiers of the possible are not determined by the limits of the actual. And in a miraculous and unexpected way, life is preparing the creative events which will open the way to freedom and resurrection. Now, there's some stuff in there that we could explore deeper, but for the sake of our conversation right now, the possible is not determined by the limits. If we were to actually look at science, well, based upon what we know, I mean, we could go 100 years ago, based upon what we know, that's not possible. It's not possible to transplant a heart. It's not possible to pacemaker. It's not possible to whatever it is, robotic assisted surgery, whatever it is. 100 years ago wasn't even in the minds of most physicians and scientists. 300 years ago, was the word robot even in the vernacular? So the frontiers of the possible are not determined by the limits of right here, right now. If it was, then George Lucas would have never made Star Wars, because the limits of the actual should have prevented any of that from becoming possible. It should have prevented Industrial Lights and Magic and THX from ever being created by Lucas. Because the limits, so remember in CSL, we often remind ourselves we are not bound by precedent, the limits of the actual, the limits of what were, the status quo. That doesn't bind us, it doesn't limit us. We are bound to, convicted by, committed to principle. And principle opens the way to greater freedom and resurrection, meaning we get to change our lives individually and collectively. Now, because Ruben mentioned this possible, I want us to be very clear that possible means something can be done, can be true, but it doesn't mean that I necessarily think it will be done or will be true. Is it possible that Tracy will go to New Orleans with me again? That we will meet up with Ernessa and Noah, and that we will go to the Bug Museum and Tracy will eat a cockroach burger? Is that possible? Yes, it's possible. However, it is highly unlikely, which means it is not probable. Because if something is probable, it is highly likely that something will in fact happen. So Ray, Ernessa, and Noah, the probability of going, high. The probability of Tracy going there, very low. The probability of Tracy going there, very high. Now, what's there? Some other restaurant. Okay? So whenever we're talking about, infinite possibilities, okay, but when do we turn and say, of these possibilities, which ones are we anchoring into, making them probabilities? And even deeper, because there's a third word, which she says, if something is inevitable, if it's an inevitability, then it is certain to happen. It's basically unavoidable. So when do we take the infinite possibilities of and turn them into infinite probabilities and turn those into infinite inevitabilities? Yeah, I'm going to let that sink in. Because if we don't really anchor into the energy of, then we're playing word salad and we're not engaging the power of the law, creative process, law of attraction. I don't care what you want to call it. We're not actually engaging it in a way that is most effective. And in essence, we are being less open at the top. We may even be contracting at the top and the bottom rather than expanding. And let's be clear, this is open, this is expanding. So are we simply open at the top or are we expanding at the top? Are we simply open at the bottom or are we expanding at the bottom? Because my heart, the energy of love in my heart chakra can be open, but is it expanding? Therein lies the question for us to explore. Dr. Sean Ginwright says, if we look deep within for a moment and ask, how can we change our outlook? We will at least be on the right track. At least. And I've heard someone say that if we want something we've never seen, never experienced, we have to do something that we have never tried, do something we have never done. We have to do something different. How many of us are doing the same things, expecting different results regarding our health and well-being, regarding our relationships, regarding politics, regarding how centers and churches operate, regarding any number of things? We're doing the same thing, expecting different results. How does that work? Are we ready to do something different, to experience something different? Dr. Holmes says, find me one person who can get their own littleness out of the way, and they shall reveal to me the immeasurable magnitude of the universe in which I live. Cool. However, much like she, I'm curious to know, what is this littleness that Dr. Holmes is referring to? If I were to ask you, what would your answer be? What is this littleness? Now, there's a lot of things we, traditionally will say ego and a whole bunch of stuff. Now, generally, it's whenever we believe or act from a consciousness that we are less than, that we're not good enough, that any way, shape, or form, there's some residual idea of being a sinner, being broken, being flawed, etc. When we're focused on that, how can we focus on the truth of our being? We have blinders on, which only give us the ability to see one specific aspect. You got a C on that test. I must be a C student. That means I'm stupid. Just like mom said, I'm never going to amount to anything. She take those off and I got a C on this test. Because the other tests don't matter. The only test that matters is this one because it's right in front of me where I see the grade on the paper. So what am I choosing to believe about myself? What am I choosing to believe about life? How do I expand my awareness to not make this my identity? Because when we do that, we are shrinking, we are contracting, and that's the littleness. that Holmes is inviting us to let go of. Dr. Holmes goes on to say, there is a power transcendent beyond our needs, our little ones. Now, demonstrating a dime is good if one needs it, or healing oneself of a pain is certainly good if one has a pain. But be aware that beyond that, the real feast of, and he goes into certain scriptural phraseology here, the real feast of the tabernacle of the Almighty in the temple of the living God, in the banquet hall of heaven, there is something beyond anything that you and I have touched. And simply what this is saying is there is so much more than we could even imagine available to us that's beyond a dime. Now, as he says, if you need a dime, demonstrate a dime. But if you need a dime, demonstrate a dime and then demonstrate $1 million. I don't know. Don't simply limit yourself to this one little thing. Expand it. Get what you need and demonstrate what you need and none of us are free till all of us are free. And so, oftentimes we've heard someone say, teach a man to fish, give a man a fish he eats for a day, teach him the fish he eats for the rest of his life. But if the man is hungry right now, while you're trying to teach him, he's not going to learn very much. So give him a fish, let him nourish himself while teaching him how to fish, so that he not only has fish to feed himself and his family and community, but there is enough for. Don't simply become enlightened for one's own self. This is the idea of the bodhisattva. Enlightenment so that all may be enlightened. Health and well-being so that all may experience health and well-being. Liberation and emancipation so that all may experience liberation and emancipation. So identify what it is that is needed for one's individual self and the collective, and then do the work. Climb the mountain, right? Climb the mountain. What are your physiological needs? What are your physical needs? Climb the mountain. What are your safety needs or wants? Climb the mountain. What needs or wants do you have regarding love and belonging? Climb the mountain. Esteem, climb the mountain. Self-realization, climb the mountain. For when you reach the mountain top, keep going. What's above self-actualization? I don't know. Don't need to know. But in an infinite and ever-expanding consciousness, there is always more. Something beyond this. So while being present to what is, there's also the expansiveness of what can be possible, what can be probable, what will be inevitable. Are we living in such a way that peace and harmony around the world is inevitable? Are we living our lives in such a way that food for all inevitable? Are we living in such a way that a world that works for all is inevitable, not just possible, inevitable? What does that even look like or mean? Like, let's take that to meditation and contemplation and conversation. What is our invitation regarding our lives to make a world that works for all inevitable. If I hold this ink pen and open my fingers, is it simply a possibility that it will fall? Is it a probability that it will fall? There's no tape, there's no glue, it's just the pen. Or is it inevitable because didn't really mean to let it go. Or is it inevitable that it will fall because gravity deems it so? Are we crafting our lives in such a way that a world that works for all is inevitable? Now, part of that is, what do you, in your own life, what do you need for your life, your vision, your mission, your purpose, and the manifestation of it to become inevitable? What do you need? What do you want? What do you desire? And what is the foundation and structure that makes that inevitable? Now, Dr. Holmes goes on to say it would be wonderful indeed if a group of people should arrive on Earth who were for something and against nothing. Pause. This has often been used to spiritually bypass or malpractice, because we have made this about only focus on one thing and don't address this thing. This would be the summum bonum. The what? Summum bonum, Latin, which means the highest good of this thing we call the human organization. Okay? For something and against nothing. Okay, so what does that look like when we talk about this? Because if I'm for, so what would I be for? Desegregation? I don't know. What would I be for? Equity and justice? Okay, we'll say equity and justice. I'm for that. How is that changing this consciousness, though? How is my being for this to the degree where I don't even look at this? I don't listen to it. Well, but wait a minute. So what if I happen to be one of the Black children who was bussed into their school? How am I supposed to now be so for this while they're spitting on me, calling me a monkey, and worse? So how do I ensure that I am not engaging in metaphysical malpractice by turning my attention and not addressing this at all? Does this not have to be addressed in some way, shape, or form? How else do we change consciousness? This is an addiction. They are addicted to a certain mental paradigm in the same way that people are addicted to opioids. Racism and white supremacy is the opioid that they get high off of. How do we detox them? When do we have an intervention so that their addiction, that they can heal from it? Now, in a similar manner, when we are quote unquote protesting, how do we ensure that we are protesting in a way or attesting in a way where it's metaphysical activism, where we are changing the foundation, not just putting a band-aid on? And this is where it comes into, how do we do both and? Not one or the other. Not just be for this and against this, but identify what is the thing. So, for example, how many of us would love, if given the opportunity, I'm going to pour this on you and give you a cold? How many, raise your hand if you want to have a cold or the flu? No one's going to raise their hand. I don't know who willingly wants to have, unless someone's trying to get out of work. No one wants to be sick. So I don't have to be anti-sick or protest sickness. Wholeness and wellness, and be so steeped in that that the rest of this stuff, the rest of the consciousness, the rest of it's taken care of because we are operating from this space, which means when I need to speak to whatever this is, activism, I am able to do so, but I'm doing so from here. When I'm speaking regarding whatever the dis-ease is, whatever the addiction is, I'm able to do so while speaking from here. I don't have to step into this and speak from here or here. I can speak it from here. How do we do that? How are we invited to be so steeped in principle that we are able to do that? And part of it is, as Dr. King referenced, part of it is reestablishing this prophetic vision and zeal and action and carrying that torch, being that torch, so that the energy that the gay liberation movement had, the energy, the passion, civil rights, act up, the passion, the energy, the fire is now what is fueling equity, justice, liberation for all, wholeness, and wellness for all. Do we have that individually? Do we have that deeply entrenched energy of wholeness and wellness and unity and peace? Albert Einstein says a human being is part of the whole, called by us universe. A part limited in time and space. They experience themselves, their thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of delusion of their consciousness. Now, this delusion is a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task, our invitation must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty, a world that works for all, not just for all humans, not just for all life. Because oftentimes people think, oh, people and animals. It's also plants and trees, the ecology of, it's all of creation, a world that works for all. How do we expand our circle of compassion? Now, part of that is understanding that when we talk about this kind of stuff, the war on drugs, what's the consciousness of this? Because it's not a war on drugs. It's a war on people. So how do we address what is the actual thing in this that consciousness needs to be shifted around? What is causing people to use drugs, sell drugs, traffic drugs? What is the unmet need that this, the business of drugs, is? How is it, right? Where's the connection? Are we having the conversations around this in terms of, okay, so what is making this person sell drugs? Economic needs. Is that what it is? Then how do we address that so that they have their economic needs met in another way, which removes the need for it to be met this way? someone, whatever it is. When do we enlarge our circle of compassion, enlarge our circle of metaphysical understanding to engage in the conversations that truly heal the core issue, problem, etc., and stop superficially doing so. Because when we superficially do this, in many ways, we are accessorizing. You said, what does it mean to accessorize? To accessorize is to provide some form of complement to a garment. You put on a dress, you put on a suit and tie, and then you complement it with an accessory, some form of jewelry, something. An accessory is a thing which can be added to something else to make it more useful, to make it more versatile, to make it more attractive. In essence, you are using the accessory to decorate. Christmas trees, we accessorize them by decorating the Christmas tree. Now, our spiritual leader, Reverend Sonny Cantrell Smith, says, do I decorate my life with spirit? Am I using spirit as an accessory, or is my life a demonstration of what the divine can be as me? Let that sink in. Am I using spirit as an accessory, as a decoration? As a metaphysical liberation theology, science of mind and spirit offers us the means to invest our life-affirming mental equivalence into the law of mind and action, whereby we actively change the inner and outer landscape of consciousness, individually and collectively. Let us explore the ways that we can come together daily, even in conflict, and truly create a world that works for all. This week's affirmation, our declaration, I'll say it first, and if you agree, if it resonates with you, say it with me on the second go round. I consistently create exciting new ways to experience and express spirit. I live a full-bodied yes to life. Together, I consistently create exciting new ways to experience and express spirit. I live a full-bodied yes to life. And so it is. This week's questions. These are our last questions for the year. But we've got more next year. Number one, remember that Holmes quote about getting our littleness out of the way and being for something and against nothing? What does that mean to you? What does that look like as a practice? Number two, and actually let's also add, is there a tendency, or how do people use this to bypass? Have you seen people do it? How did they do it? And how can we shift that? Number two, what does it mean to accessorize God, to decorate one's life with spirit? And what might be a reason that some people would do this? And then lastly, if there were three columns, the possible, the probable, the inevitable, what things in my life would be in each column? Meditation as a daily practice, is that possible, probable, or inevitable? Exercising, possible, probable, inevitable. Having greater openness and love for people, possible, probable, or inevitable. And in what ways do we, I, you, prevent possible from becoming probable or probable becoming inevitable? In what ways do we block the transition that brings greater expansiveness into our lives? Yeah, I know I said that was the last one. Number 4, what is my invitation as I move into the new year regarding being open at the top, being expansive at the top, and expansive at the bottom? And am I committed to being expansive at the top, expansive at the bottom? Am I committed to widening my circle? Breathe. Entering into that space of infinite awareness that we call prayer, that space where the infinite expansiveness of the universe as us resides, right here and right now. The isness and allness of all that the universe is present, showing itself in, through, and as us. That means these words are an expression of the divine, because the divine is all there is. So I allow these words to be spoken with a prophetic vision, prophetic zeal, and prophetic action. And I speak this in such a way that I speak this blessing, this confirmation, this declaration for everyone watching this, that this year is a close out, and we surrender and release whatever we need to surrender and release, and expand and open into what this new year can be, could be, will be for us. What are we choosing? What are we declaring that 2024 will be for us? And how are we laying the foundation to ensure the inevitability of it? So that if I say 2024 is a year of greater physical health, mental health, and spiritual health and well-being for me, what is my invitation to lay as the foundation to make that declaration inevitable? Not simply possible, not even probable, but inevitable. And so I breathe and allow the energy of love and the fire of life to be present right here in my very being, as my very being. As I know the truth of myself, I live the truth of myself. It is my embodiment and my daily expression. And I know that what is true for me is true for everyone watching. The circle is expanding always. The top is expanding always. The bottom is expanding always. The infinite I am is expanding always. I am that I am what I am ever becoming more and more of. And the law says yes. And prayer is answered. Prayer is the expression of the truth right here and right now. So we receive it, we accept it, we declare it, and we live it by saying, and so it is. And so it is. Namaste, much love, joy, and blessings. Happy New Year. Happy New You. See you soon. Blessings.